Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mingxin Liao. I'm the Chief of International Relations Office from Donghai University. Today, we are very happy here to have Ambassador Bowman with us. She is from St. Vincent and Grenadines. And today, she's going to give us a speech on the topic of education as a tool of diplomacy. Before we start her speech, I'd like to thank our Donghai alumni, especially our former ambassador, Zhu Yufeng, for connecting Donghai with St. Vincent and Grenadines. We also like to thank our alumni, Chen Songping and Cai Hongyi Xiansheng, for their very generous support. Today, we are also very happy to have our President Chen to give us the opening speech to welcome Ambassador. Now, let's welcome President Zhang Guoen.
Good afternoon, Ambassador Bowman, my Donghai colleague, and the audience join us online. I'm President of Donghai University. It's my great honor to introduce Ambassador Bowman. As many of you know, both Ambassador and I are educators. We both share a strong faith in education and its incredible power to overcome obstacles and transform lives. I have devoted my research to influence learning experience through digital resources for past 3 decades. However, with the advent of new technology and the spread of globalization, kind of learning experience, digital native student craft is very different from their predecessors. Let's say, Donghai aims to provide open-loop education that fosters a lifelong relationship between our student and the university. Donghai offers scholarship to St. Vincent and the Grenadines students to be part of the future-oriented education. We appreciate our lasting friendship with St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the privilege. This scholarship is beginning of our joint effort to provide quality and timely education for generations to come. Now, let's welcome Ambassador Bowman.
Ambassador Elizabeth Chu, who I know would be online, distinguished representatives of Donghai University, Councillor Denny of the Embassy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, representatives of Vincentian students in Taiwan who would also be online. Thank you all for making the time to be here. My main purpose this afternoon is to facilitate the presentation of our embassy's token of gratitude in the form of a painting to Donghai University. As we are all aware, former President Wang and members of the Donghai alumni have been extraordinarily generous to the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as our country's representative in Taiwan, our embassy must demonstrate its gratitude in this albeit restricted manner. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is fortunate, very fortunate, to have among the Vincentian students in Taiwan at this time our engineering student, Mr. Sean Roach, who is an exemplary artist. Sean has created a painting entitled Amazona Gildingi, which is at once a tribute to St. Vincent and the Grenadines' national bird and to our country's African heritage. Our artist describes this painting as a merger between the patterns on the parrot's wings and the visual symbols of the Ashanti and Dinka of West Africa. The message woven into the wings of our national bird is, and I quote, strive to accomplish the unusual, end of quotation. However, before I present this gem of our country to President Chang, I welcome this opportunity to address you all on the topic, education as a tool of diplomacy. Education as a tool of diplomacy. There are two concepts in this title which are dear to me and which very effectively capture the relationship which has been nurtured between Taiwan and St. Vincent and the Grenadines for 41 years. These concepts are education and diplomacy. And having been an educator since 1980, I will begin by deconstructing the concept of education within the context of the bilateral relationship between our countries. There is a difference between education and schooling. Schooling fits into the process of education, but schooling is not the sum total of education. Schooling encompasses the instructions and the interactions which take place within the actual and virtual settings of classrooms. Guidance in specific disciplines and the nuances of these disciplines constitute schooling. In most societies, schooling is divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary level cohorts. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the government of Taiwan, since 1998, has been contributing tangibly to the schooling of our nation's children at all of these levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary, on an annual basis. Up to 2016, the Taiwanese government had been contributing US $100,000 to the feeding, clothing, transportation, and equipping of students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In 2017, this sum of money increased to US $200,000 per annum. And just 2 weeks ago, the Vincentian media reported the distribution of $320,600 by the Taiwanese embassy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines towards this cause. This means that the direct funding of the schooling of students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been in existence for 24 years. And in a country whose population numbers just under 110,000, it stands to reason that most Vincentian households have been beneficiaries of this funding. Indeed, Ambassador Chu is able to bear testament to the widespread impact of Taiwan's generosity in this regard. I always remind her of her personal popularity in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in particular with my former students at the Girls' High School. Whenever Ambassador Chu's vehicle was driven into our schoolyard, the cheers of appreciation were spontaneous. And of course, the girls also appreciated her stylish appearance. So my point is this: Taiwan's contribution to schooling in my country reverberates at a fundamental bread and butter level. Families throughout our country know that Taiwan is central to the daily schooling received by their children. When the children of families are impacted for life. Taiwan's contribution to schooling extended to undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate levels in 2004, when the MOFA and the ICDF fully funded scholarships to Vincentian students were instituted. Therefore, since 2004, approximately 230 Vincentian students have graduated from Taiwanese universities. And of course, we are very pleased to have in our audience today a representative number of Vincentian students who are in the process of gaining tertiary level certification in this country. Indeed, at least one of our students online this afternoon is all set to join Donghai for the upcoming academic year. In addition to this, scores of our nationals have undergone short course training in this country, mainly in the areas of medical and agricultural techniques and technologies. Towards the end of last year, Donghai granted us what amounts to a total of 40 tuition scholarships over a 5-year period, 8 scholarships per year. With time, I trust that these Donghai scholarships will develop into fully funded scholarships, probably for a smaller number of students. For, as we recognize, schooling expands and has the ingrained potential to blossom into the wider concept of education. Education takes place beyond the classroom. Education is what results when disciplines which may or may not have been honed in the classroom are applied to our navigation and negotiation of our everyday lives. Education is what allows our countries to value the role of schooling, the role of empathy, and the role of our shared humanity in our cross-cultural interactions. Education allows us to value multi-ethnicity and multiculturalism, and to recognize that geographical and political borders are secondary to the oneness of the human race. Our present pandemic has rendered artificial the borders which we often try to establish among ourselves. Education allows us to be sensitive to life's instructions as a means of furthering our development and our prosperity. Social education is what allows the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to rise to the level of internationalization, which in turn allowed us to embrace our country's campaign for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, UNSC. Our tiny country was sufficiently educated to be able to recognize what this big seat meant and still means to our country. St. Vincent and the Grenadines was the smallest country ever to hold a UNSC seat, and our impact has been laudable. We demonstrated a high level of global competence, and we were able to do so as a result of our education. Education which echoes in self-awareness, self-confidence, respect for our history, respect for others, integrity, and bravery. How then is education a tool of diplomacy? From a practical perspective, diplomacy refers to, and I quote from a Caribbean text entitled Heads of Mission, a Handbook, 2018, diplomacy refers to, and I quote, the full spectrum of actions and procedures employed for the orderly conduct of relations between and among sovereign states and between states and intergovernmental organizations. End of quotation. The full spectrum of actions between states and intergovernmental organizations aptly captures what has been taking place between Taiwan and St. Vincent and the Grenadines since our countries established relations in 1981. The diplomacy between our countries has been vibrant, practical, and loyal. In our 41 unbroken years of being diplomatic allies, the educational exchanges which have taken place have transcended schooling. When Vincentian students live and work among Taiwanese for 5 years or more, when we learn and use Mandarin, the cultural exchange is effected and is effective. A country's culture travels on its language. Our people, Taiwanese and Vincentian, traverse each other's cultural worlds through a process of education, a process of understanding and growing, a process of developing from awareness to acceptance to genuine friendship. This is the process of education at its most positive. When we give a person food, we feed that person for today. When we teach that person how to feed herself, we teach that person for life. This then is the outcome and objective of a rounded education, a process which enables and enhances livelihood. Schooling must ultimately result in education in order for it to most effectively serve society. Schooling must translate into education for life. Over the years, our governments have undertaken life-affirming projects and measures in the practice of their diplomacy. People-centered initiatives are the hallmarks of our country's interactions. Consistent contributions to our country's healthcare, agriculture, social and technological development are high on Taiwan's agenda in its diplomatic interactions with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Power-wielding and power-brokering diplomacy, where might and threats are utilized, have not shaken our alliance, nor are we in a position to adopt such tactics. Our education, Taiwanese and Vincentian, arms us with the awareness that the survivalist or coping mechanisms which must be utilized in the protection of our democracies, and our sovereignty. Our relatively small countries are exposed to a number of threats, existential and internal, which could potentially tear apart the fabric of our societies. Our best tools of defense and self-protection are our adherence to the United Nations principles of sovereignty and diplomacy. Time and education have taught us this. When St. Vincent and the Grenadines opened its embassy here in Taiwan, 2 months after it was elected to serve on the United Nations Security Council, where China holds the power of a veto, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was reassuring Taiwan of its faith in and its commitment to the strength of our diplomatic relations and its respect for Taiwan's status as a country. The power of education, of educated diplomacy has brought us thus far, and we will continue to stand with Taiwan in this regard. Thank you. I would now like to present to President Chan on behalf of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, on behalf of our student, I would like to present to you this token of our appreciation.
Okay, thank you. So, we can open?
Yes, please. In front.
Okay. We can put here.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Special gift. Thank you.
So this is our national bird, Amazonia.
National bird, yes. Okay.
And we have here our
What's the name?
Amazonia gilding. So this is the okay. This is the where rat.
中文名什么？水晶，你都过了。
Okay, so
Wow.
tile. So this is the tile,
Oh.
which tells us
Oh.
what's on it. See?
So-
Amazonia gildingi,
来特写一
St.
下。
Vincent and the Grenadines is national bird, presented to Donghai University with gratitude and in recognition of the 40th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Taiwan and SVG. Artist is Sean Roach. That's our student who is at issue, and he painted this last year.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have
Okay, thank
English
you.
here and
The
the
Chinese, yeah.
Mandarin there.
来，你们过来，来照相。来，那个人，那个一个来这边。好，我们在这边拍照，来，来，可以，可以来。好，用手机。你这个是从电脑中心来，外面。 OK。
好，谢谢。
OK， thank you。帮忙拿一下。
好。
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So that concludes today's speech and our gift presentation ceremony. And do we have anyone from our online audience? Do you want to say anything to the ambassador or to our president here? So we'd like to open the floor to those who are online. 接下来我们把这段时间开放给我们线上的观众听众。如果有一些想要跟 ambassador 讲话的可以利用这个机会。我们线上的我们的东海的校友们，我们可以打开你的镜头和麦克风。不知道我们线上有没有哪位校友想要这个时候跟我们的 ambassador Bowman 来互动？Yeah, someone raised a hand, so can we let her in and talk?
Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
As a teacher and an Englisher, I'm a student from Shanghai University in Foreign Language and Literature Department. And
Yes.
I just want to mention that because my name is Emily, it's here, and I just want to mention that I have taken the education program in Shanghai University, so I really enjoyed the speech, and thank you very much.
Yeah, our student Emily really appreciate your speech, and they want to thank you so much for your inspiring speech.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any question for the ambassador?
Yes, you could ask me.
No, I just want to show my
Thank you so much, Emily. 那我们不知道还有没有其他的校友？那我们要再次谢谢我们的朱一凤大使校友，还有我们的陈松平校友，还有我们的蔡弘毅校友，你们的帮忙。那我们今天我们的线上的演讲就到此结束，谢谢大家。那也希望大家继续的来支持 St. Vincent， 也继续的支持东海，谢谢。